Yo, it's your boy Giovanni and my dog Cliff. And you know we love the NBA, so we're here to kick off the NBA season with a little bit of a preview of the power rankings and who we think are going to be the best teams and worst teams of the NBA.
So that being said, what we drinking tonight?
Ooh, we got a little bit of whiskey, some old fashioned, you know what I'm saying?
So tonight we're going to start off by going by these power rankings that I put together, and I put it in 6 different categories. So I got teams 26 through 30, full rebuild. Teams 21 through 25, a little bit more talent there, but they're still up and coming. Dread zone, worst spot you want to be in the NBA.
Yeah.
You're not really competing, but you're not really getting a top pick either. Then I got the fringe playoff teams, the second tier playoff teams that probably have enough talent, but then I got the real contenders 1 through 5. So let's go ahead, get straight to it, kick it off. So these are my teams. I got 26 through 30. Now, Gio, is there any teams on here that you kind of feel like belong a little higher and out of this list?
I think I do. I think 27 is a little too low for the Portland Trailblazers. I think they got a lot of pieces, good pieces back from the Suns, and they already had some pieces there. I think Scoot Henderson is going to be a pretty good addition to that team. They got a big man in DeAndre Ayton. Jeremy Grant re-signed. I think that team is a little too good to be a bottom feeder team, not a playoff team. I mean, they could, you never know in the NBA, but I think they're a little too low on this list for me.
So why don't we start at team 30? So I think the Detroit Pistons, I got them at number 30. I think they got some nice prospects, Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Jalen Durant. But that being said, I just kind of feel like they're just playing prospects. They're going to try to get a top pick. I don't really think they have an identity. Do you disagree with
No, I agree. I think this team is just collecting draft picks at this point. They're just kind of not collecting draft picks, but they're just collecting players in the draft. I don't think they really know what the direction they want to go in. So I don't agree. I mean, I don't disagree.
That being said, so I got the Washington Wizards at 29. So in my opinion, Jordan Poole, Kyle Kuzma, nice scores, but I feel like other than that, it's the same thing. This is a team that just wants to start playing young guys and draft high. Again, I don't really think they have an identity outside of that. So do you disagree at 29?
It's kind of tough. I think Washington has a better chance than Houston because I think Jordan Poole is a good player. He's shown flashes of being great, and Kyle Kuzma, he can get hot. Other than that, they don't really have that great of a team overall. But I still do think they're going to be bottom of the list, when it comes to it.
Now, I got the Spurs at 28. Now, I actually do think this team has some good talent. I mean, Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, they already proved that they're good offensive players. Now they got Victor Wembanyama, which everybody says this is the best prospect since, and they always say that. But I mean, this guy could legitimately be a stud on both sides year one, even if he's not an all-star. But he'll be good right away. But I do think because there's so much parity in this league, I don't have them winning too much this year. But what do you think? 28?
I agree with you. I think they're a bottom team. I mean, I did watch a preseason game with the Miami Heat recently, and their shooters when they get hot, they can shoot the ball really well. But that team is only Victor. It will be throughout the year. I think he'll be the guy that really just pushes the envelope, and that's about it.
So my reason why I put the Trailblazers at 27, I do think they got a nice piece with DeAndre Ayton. I think Jeremy Grant, I feel like they're probably stuck with him, but I do think this team is going to try to trade him as soon as they can so they can focus more on the younger guys. It is great that they have Scoot Henderson. I think this guy has a ceiling of what John Wall was in his prime. But that being said, I still think they're a few years away.
I can see your points there. Yeah, I mean, the Trailblazers wanted to get pieces to grow. I mean, think about it. DeAndre Ayton isn't even 30 yet. They're still a young team, and they still have young pieces, and that's what they wanted to do. Get young, but still quality pieces that can play right now. So, I mean, anything can happen in the NBA. So, it's a valid argument.
Okay, so now I got the Rockets at 26. So from my perspective, I kind of feel like now that they added Fred VanVleet, they got some pieces to start winning now. Jalen Green already proved he's an offensive weapon. Jabari Smith Jr., he's kind of the perfect version of a complementary power forward you want in today's NBA. He's athletic, he's tall, he can shoot threes, he can defend. Now, he's got to continue in his development, but I do think with Sengun too, like this team to start winning now, probably just not a lot.
Yeah, I agree. I think they've been stagnant only record-wise, not player-wise. They've been collecting good players, young players, talented players. There's some chemistry there. It may take a few years for them to show out, but I think the Houston Rockets got something going for them. And so yeah, I still think they're a few years away.
All right, so here is my up-and-coming ranking. So these are teams they're not very talented, but like you can make a case that they can be frisky and they can technically make the playoffs. Now, are there any of these teams that you feel like shouldn't be this low?
When I look at these teams, it's really hard to argue because they're all so alike. Like there's just what I will say is that I think the Utah Jazz, remember that hot start last year? And they were like, whoa, this is the surprise team, and then they kind of fell flat. I think they can still have a better year than they did. So I think the Utah Jazz, it's hard because then you could say the Toronto Raptors. I mean, they got young pieces. They're always in the mix, right? They're always in the playoffs, barely there. They're always there. So you could even say out of all of these teams, they might be the list. I don't think it's Charlotte.
All right, so let's get straight into it. So the Charlotte Hornets, now they got a good piece in LaMelo Ball, but outside of that, I think like they tried to go all in like 2 or 3 years ago when they got Gordon Hayward, and now I think they realized last year they made a smart move and say like, hey, we got to rebuild this thing. Now, I do think they have enough talent that they could actually win some more games, more than the teams that I put in the bottom 5. But I do think, like, if this team was being smart, they need to go towards the youth movement, and that's where I think they should go.
Yeah, I can see that happening.
Now, Toronto Raptors, I got them kind of low because I do think this team is talented enough to be, like, at an 8 seed or something, so, like, much higher. But I think this team, the last 2 years, they've been trying to go in 2 directions. Like, are they rebuilding? Are they going all the way in? But I think their GM, like, I think what he really wanted was he wanted to keep their assets and trade for a superstar. It hasn't happened. So I have them at 24 because I think they're going to start trading away those veterans because the superstar trade didn't happen. They were actually trying to trade for Dame. It didn't happen. So that being said, I think they realized, like, they got to get off of Siakam, and I think this is his last contract.
It is.
His last year anyways.
Yeah.
But I think this team's going to go young. So that's why I kind of predict them lower.
Yeah. That's a good point, too. I think Toronto might be in the cusp of, like, just we couldn't get Dame. All right, let's let him play out. And then it's like let's start trading for some draft picks.
So I got the Magic at 23. Now, I feel like this could go a lot higher, a lot lower.
Yeah.
But because it's kind of crazy with it. Now, they got 2 excellent young guys. Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner are 2 excellent young players, and these guys might even be perennial all-stars. And Wendell Carter is a good center too, but that being said, I think they have too many prospects at the guard position that they all look okay, but none of them are really standing out in comparing to like some of the other all-star guards in the conference. So that being said, I don't know if they have enough of an identity, even though they have some good talent.
Yeah, it was my I wanted them to be my surprise team because, finally I feel like Orlando's turning that, that curve where they need to be great and finally have those pieces. But it remains to be seen, man. They have to prove it. And so far they haven't. So you never know.
So Jazz, I mean, I got them at 22, which may sound bad, but to me, it's a great place to be in when they traded for so many first-round picks, and then they're still kind of competitive.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go into Team 21. Now, the Pacers, I do think, could legitimately be a playoff team. I just think, like, there's some pieces on their roster that they want to move around, like Miles Turner. Like, I don't know if they're going to keep him. Buddy Hield, I don't know if they're going to keep him. They got some younger guys that they like, so I don't know if they're going to go all in with this roster. So that's why I think, like, 21 is safe, but I do think they could be an 8 seed.
Yeah.
But I do have them missing the playoffs.
Yeah, I think the addition of Bruce Brown was big. They needed a shooter. They needed that guy. Miles Turner has been on trade rumors for the past few years. He was linked to the Lakers. He was linked to a bunch of different teams. So I think they're still trying to get rid of him. So you can't, and he's a great player, but I just feel like it's time to move on. So you can't really say, oh, this team is all in, they're going to make the playoffs, because Miles Turner might not be there. They might be rebuilding in the middle of the year. So, yeah.
All right, cool. So my next group, Dread Zone. Okay, so like I said, this is the spot you want to be in because, again, you're not really competing. You're not really getting a high pick. Now, a lot of these teams you could debate and say, like, I think other teams should be in this category. But 16 through 20, two of these teams would make the playoffs in my list. But is there any teams in here that you think should be a lot higher?
I think Oklahoma City. Now, I get Dallas has Luka. I get Dallas has Kyrie Irving. But you got two dominant ball handlers, right? And it's just, we've seen that from time to time. Like, it doesn't work. Oklahoma City, I think, should be higher because of I'm sorry if I mispronounced it, Gilgeous-Alexander. He's just too good, and that team, I think they can make some noise. So I think they should be a little better. I think they actually have a winning season this year.
Okay, so that being said, I got the Brooklyn Nets at 20. Like, I actually think this is a really competitive team. Like, Mikal Bridges is an excellent player. Like, this guy is going to be probably like an all-star multiple times in his career. He's good on offense and defense, and I think like being outside of the Suns actually really helps him because now he has an opportunity.
This is his team now.
Yeah, this is his team. And the funny thing too is, it's like the Blazers were willing to give like everything up, like 3 draft picks and players to get Mikal Bridges. The Nets said no. I think that's a testament to see how much the Nets think of him. And they got a bunch of other solid players. Ben Simmons, like, I'm not saying he's good, but I think like if he can be good enough where he can be traded, I think the Nets will be happy with that. But do you disagree with 20?
I don't. I think you're spot on. It kind of determines what Ben Simmons does, right? If he's a flop, trade him. But it kind of, Ben Simmons is the biggest factor, so I agree with you on that, man.
So Oklahoma, I got them at 19, so they would be missing the playoffs. Now last year they were 40 and 42, which means like they were actually pretty competitive and they were in the playoff race. And they have one of the best 10 players in the league, and he's still young.
Yeah.
So SGA still is continuing to ascend. He might be a top 5 player within a year or two. But that being said, I still think this team's pretty young. Like the jury's still out on Chet Holmgren because he didn't play last year, but because they are getting him and they got Josh Giddey, they got Lou Dort, and they got a bunch of other players, I do think they can be competitive.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said, man, I think this is the team that should be higher because Chet, he's shown that he can be a top guy in this league as far as defense goes, and I think that's what Oklahoma City needs to propel them.
So number 18. So this was kind of like my hot take, and I feel like you already said that you agree. I don't think the Dallas thing is going to work. I don't even have them making the playoffs, let alone having a high seed. But that being said, Kyrie, Luka, this team kind of reminds me of the Nets when it was just Kyrie and Durant. But even then, they don't even have the role players that team had. And then, like, I don't trust Kyrie Irving. Like, I feel like if he's locked in, he could be a top 10 player borderline. But like, I just don't see it happening. This team is not well constructed. It has 2 superstar point guards, but bro, I keep saying it. I don't trust Kyrie.
Yeah, and I agree. You know what this team reminds me of? It reminds me of that. What was it? That 09 or 08 Denver Nuggets team where you had 2 ball dominant Allen Iverson and Melo. Like, it was dynamic, right? You seen the 2 30-point scores, but it didn't escalate into a title. It didn't show anything, and I feel like we saw it halfway through the season. It just doesn't work.
So I got the Hawks at 17. So this is the first team that I have making the playoffs. So they would be the 8. They would be the 8 seed. Now Trae Young, DeJounte Murray. I think those are 2 excellent guards. Now, I think everybody criticizes Trae Young for hero ball, and I think like it's the truth. Like, I think a lot of teammates don't like playing with him because he's so ball dominant, because he wants to be the main guy taking the shots. He's kind of like, he wants to have that James Harden offense in Houston. And I think that's creating a problem. And I think if this doesn't work, I think the Hawks are going to look to see, like, do we want DeJounte Murray just playing point guard and then just trying to move Trae Young? I don't know. Maybe I'm jumping ahead.
Well, I mean, I kind of agree with you on that point. I know Atlanta, they kind of like overachieved when they went to the conference finals a few years ago. I think got a good team on a bad spot at the right time. You know what I'm saying?
That sentence broke down.
Yeah. So I do think they're an 8th seed. I think they have some good pieces. Trae Young is going to be Trae Young, but I just don't think they have enough there to even scare anybody in the playoffs.
So the Bulls, I got them as number 7. I do think they got some talent. Like, I think Lonzo Ball is either missing a lot of this season or the whole season, so that's why I kind of knocked them down. Alex Caruso is going to be their point guard. Very solid guard, but he's not like a true point guard. Now, they got talent. Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Nikola Vucevic. That being said, like, I think their offense might be good most of the time, but like, this is not a good two-way team. Like, I think they're gonna make the playoffs and they're gonna like lose in 4 or 5 games.
Yeah, they have a lot of holes on each side of the ball. Like you said, Alex Caruso, great defender, obviously one of the best guards on defense, but 8 points a game is not going to cut it. Horrific 3-point shooting. They're good on offense against bad teams. They struggled mightily, and they did that last year. Yeah.
Okay, so here's my fringe playoff teams. Now, I think there's some teams in here you might argue, but like, is there any of these teams that you think like, no, they need to be in a higher tier?
I think. No. I know. Maybe I shouldn't say that. You know the Miami Heat are going to be in the conference finals again.
They're going to be in the finals.
Now, I will say
Yeah.
that this team is basically the same team as last year, and they struggled because they lost some offensive weapons, so I don't want to say that. But I will say this. I think New Orleans is going to be a better team this year. I think Zion, hoping to God, he's healthy, and he's going to be that missing piece that excels them. And I think out of this list, I think New Orleans.
Okay, so let's go one by one. So Minnesota Timberwolves, they got a lot of talent. I like Mike Conley at point guard. Anthony Edwards is proven to be like a huge offensive weapon. He's going to be one of the best players in the league, especially offensively. Now, the Cat Rudy Gobert thing, like, I just don't think it doesn't make sense. It never did make sense. You have 2 centers for today's NBA, so that also doesn't make sense. Cat shouldn't be playing the 4. So that being said, like, I think they're going to try to run it through. I have them missing the playoffs technically. And that being said, I think they need to reevaluate and see, like, hey, should we trade Karl Anthony Towns? This doesn't make sense.
I think they will trade Karl, and I agree with you. I think the Rudy Gobert Cat thing is like they wanted some Twin Tower type of,
And it's not
Robinson and
like,
Duncan. Yeah. It's just not. That's not the thing. I think Cat will be traded. Might be the Knicks because there's been a lot of rumors. So yeah.
So the Pelicans, I do think if you told me they would be perfectly healthy all year, I'd probably have them the 2 or 3 seed because we saw it last year. I think they were like in the 1 and 2 seed.
I think they were the number 1 playoff, but the number 1 team for a few weeks.
But here's the reason why I have to knock them. As unstoppable as Zion is, I just don't trust him to play more than 40 games. So that being said, that's why I have them as the 8th seed. Just because of the games that Zion's going to miss. Okay, so next I got the New York Knicks. So I got them as the 6th seed in the East. Jalen Brunson, really like him. Julius Randle, probably the most underrated player in the NBA. There's some criticisms, but he's a really great offensive weapon as well. Do you disagree? Number 6.
No, I agree. I think the New York Knicks are going to be a tough team for anybody. Julius Randle is, I hate to say it, but he's like a poor man's Draymond Green with better offense. Like he's a switch play. He can do it all. So no, I agree with you, man.
So the Clippers, I think, is also kind of a hot take because I feel like a lot of people would put them higher than me, giving them the 7th seed. But I just don't trust Paul George and Kawhi to play a lot.
Oh man,
they're gonna miss a lot of games. Russell Westbrook, I feel like he fits that team a little bit better than obviously the Lakers. But that being said, and they have some nice role players like Zubac, but like I just feel like they're gonna miss a lot of games. They're gonna lose in the first round.
I agree. Wasn't there a stretch where Paul George and Kawhi were healthy for a lot of games and they were still struggling? Like, this was the team that was supposed to scare people. They're not scaring anybody. So, yeah, until they show me something, I don't think they do anything.
So now we get into number 11. Now, the Miami Heat, like, I feel like I'm putting them at number 11. Don't get me wrong. This is the one team where, like, if they went to the finals, like, I wouldn't be surprised because they always go to the finals. And even if they came in as an 8 seed, now I have them as the 5 seed. And I'm just doing that out of respect. Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, they're so good. And even the fact that they didn't get Dame, if they would have got Dame, I'd probably put them at 1 in the East. But that being said, since they didn't, just out of respect, I got them in the middle of the playoff race in the East.
I agree. I think they actually got worse last year. They lost.
They lost a couple.
They lost a couple guys. You know, they're shooters, and I know they were inconsistent throughout the season. Got hot in the playoffs, but still losing that. That's big. That's a big blow, and you didn't gain anything from it. So I think this might be the year that they don't even make it far in the playoffs. Unfortunately, you know. But you never know.
Okay.
Jimmy Butler.
Second tier playoff teams, 5 through 10. Is there any team you're mad at that did not make the top 5?
I think the Warriors, man, and I know it's the Warriors, but I think the addition, and I know he's old, I get it, you're 19, but the addition of Chris Paul, he's already kind of set a footprint on that team. He's kind of the calm guy that they kind of needed. I think this is a top 3 team.
Okay. All right, so let's go one by one. Sacramento Kings. So I got them at 10 just because, like, last year they kind of proved that they were legit. De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis, like, they broke out offensively. This team was, like, setting records on offense. And I think Mike Brown, right? Like, just excellent coach. He fits. He's doing what they want to do. Kevin Huerter was a really great pickup, and Keegan Murray proved, like, you know, he's going to be one of the best wings in the NBA. Great three-point shooter, great defender. So that being said, like, I feel like the Kings are positioned to win, but I do have them down as the number 6 seed because I think, you know, the West is really competitive.
Yeah, I agree with you, and you know, it comes a time where people catch on to what you're doing. So it's kind of like finally De'Aaron Fox is healthy. But I think now people kind of figured them out, so I think they take a little more losses because people are taking them more seriously.
So at number 9, I got the Cleveland Cavaliers with the number 4 seed. So I think this team is kind of stacked with young talent. Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell. Those are 2 all-star guards. And Donovan Mitchell is just, he's a superstar. And, you know, this team wants to keep him, so they're hoping they can win enough to keep him there. That being said, Evan Mobley, one of the best power forwards in the league. Jaren Allen, one of the best centers. Like, especially from a defensive standpoint. So that being said, I think this team has a lot of talent. I got them as the number 4 seed.
In the East, the East is like that 5. It's just so tough to break. I do agree. I think they were exposed in the playoffs a little bit, so I think number 4 as far as record in the regular season.
Yeah, like if they played the Heat, they would.
Yeah.
Okay, so next, team number 8, I put the Memphis Grizzlies. I think people forget how good they were when they first broke out and they were all healthy. Now, this season, they don't start with Ja Morant. They actually start with Derrick Rose at point guard. So that's why I think that'll hold them down. But Marcus Smart, I think he embodies, like, what their team is. Defensive, tough-minded, defense first. And I think this is the way the Grizzlies are now. Like, Ja Morant is kind of their offense. And he's their showmanship, but outside of that, this is a solid defensive team, and I think, like, when you can rely on defense, you can be competitive. That's why I have number 5 in the West.
I can even say they might be a little bit higher. Like Marcus Smart, that finals run for the Celtics a few years back, he was arguably the MVP of that team during the playoffs. He hit that big shot against Miami. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think it was last year. That's a big loss for the Celtics and a huge gain for the Grizzlies. So I could even see them being, you know, a little bit higher, but it kind of, you know, we'll see what happens because Ja Morant, he was injured and, you know, he had his things off to the side. So we'll see. But this team is too talented to be bad.
Yeah. Okay, so team number 7. Now, this one's a wild card for me because I feel like they just have too much talent. You can even argue that they're better, but I do think with James Harden, things could implode and then they would actually be worse. But even if you were to look at this team outside of Harden, they still have Tyrese Maxey, they still have Tobias Harris, and MVP Joel Embiid.
Yeah.
So that being said, like I still think they have too much talent to ignore. But I got them as the number 3 team. I feel like some people could say that they're lower because of the Harden situation, but he did actually lead the league in assists last year, so it's not like he's completely washed right now.
Yeah, exactly. In the playoffs, I think that one game he had he balled out in game 1 of that playoff game. So there's still glimpses of the old James Harden, but I agree they're too good of a team to be bad, even with the James Harden debacle going on.
Yeah, like even if they traded him, I still got them making.
Oh,
playoffs.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you disagree with this one, but because the top 5 is stacked.
Oh yeah.
But that being said, the Warriors, I got them at 6 because I trust them. Anytime you got Steph, Clay, and Draymond, like even if they were 45, I still feel like they're gonna win a lot. This team just wins. And then Steve Kerr is one of the best coaches in basketball. And that being said, they added Chris Paul. I don't think we're getting the CP3 of old, obviously, but I do think it helps. And that being said, I trust them. I think this team's going to make the second round. I got them as the number 14. You disagree, but keep in mind, I got them at 6. That's not bad.
Yeah. No, it's not low. It's not low at all. And it's, you're being realistic. I get it. But I just think this team with Chris Paul, he's an underrated MVP. He should have won more MVPs. I think the addition of Chris Paul, not because of his scoring, not because of his defense, because of his leadership, I think this team does better.
Okay. So now we're getting into the contenders.
Okay.
Teams, and this time we're just going 5 through 1. All right,
let's do it.
Team 5, I got the Phoenix Suns. Now, here's my thought process on them. They have all the talent. And if you look at the roster, you can say this is the most talented team, offensive talented team. They have Kevin Durant, they have Bradley Beal, they have Devin Booker. That being said, it just reminds me of the Kyrie, Harden, Durant Nets. Like, I just feel like, yes, they could be the best offense in basketball, but I haven't seen it together. I don't know who is the leader of this team. And technically, they don't have a true point guard now that they traded Chris Paul. So, like Devin Booker, I think, is going to be their pseudo point guard. But that being said, as talented as they are, I still have questions. That's why I have them at 5. I have them the number 5 team overall.
I agree with you. Like Bradley Beal, top scorer. He's a great offensive player, but they already had offense. They didn't need more offense. I mean, it's always good to have it, but trading the pieces that they did for an aging player, I don't know. It's always a big question mark. Look at the Nets when they traded a lot of pieces for an old Paul Pierce, and it kind of gives me glimpses of that. That scares me a little bit.
That's even worse.
No, I know, but it's just kind of like this is a 30-something-year-old guy. He's still a top guy. I don't know, but I do think if Kevin Durant is healthy, and he's going to put up big numbers. If Devin Booker is healthy, if Bradley Beal is still being Bradley Beal, we all know and love, this is going to be a nightmare of a matchup for a lot of teams. So they're a top 5 team on paper. They just have to prove it.
Okay, so number 4, I got the LA Lakers.
Okay.
Your team, my team now that I'm a LeBron fan. But that being said, I trust the Lakers to be good. Last year, after the trade deadline, they made their moves. They got Jared Vanderbilt, they got D'Angelo Russell, and it was just the complementary pieces that they needed. Because when they won the championship, they won it with defense. That was their identity. You couldn't stop LeBron, you couldn't stop Anthony Davis, and they had an elite defense. Jared Allen gives them that. Austin Reeves proves he can be a good defender. The question mark, and it's the only question mark that people have, is LeBron and Anthony Davis going to be healthy enough?
Yeah.
But that being said, even if these two play 60 games each this year, I have them going deep this year. So I got them at number 4.
I agree. I don't think this is going to be 65-win Laker team because, first of all, even with a healthy LeBron James and Anthony Davis, you're going to get rest, right? So there's going to be a few games where, hey, prove it to me, Russell, and prove it to me, Reeves, that you guys can kind of lead the team to wins. If AD and LeBron James are healthy, 60, 65 games throughout the year and no nagging injuries, this team is going to be ridiculous to face against in the playoffs. I think they are a top 4 team. I don't think they're breaking records as far as records go. I think this is a good 50 to 55 win team if they're healthy.
And I do see them as a true title contender.
Oh, yeah.
Because like I said, with other teams, I don't know if I trust them to get deep in the playoffs. I trust LeBron.
Yeah.
So
I mean, he's the ultimate leader. You know what I'm saying? And Austin Reeves showed out in FIBA. He showed out.
Yeah.
And you could see that this is what the Lakers need. D'Angelo Russell's going to do his thing. It really just depends on the health of LeBron James and AD.
Okay, so I just want to say the top three was really hard because I could have put anyone in the top three, but the top three is really good. Okay, Boston Celtics. So like I said, I could have put them at 1. I could have put them at 3. Like I have my reasons now. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, so good. These guys are so, and there's a reason why these two are going to be super max players. But the fact that they added a 7'3" Kristaps Porzingis who can shoot from anywhere on the court, they still have Al Horford, and the fact that they added Drew Holiday, like this team is scary. Like if I have one knock on them, I still don't know like who's going to be like their hero ball shooter at the end of games, because they're all insanely talented, but I don't think like none of them are like clutch 3-point shooters. So that being said, I feel like there's a slight, but this team is as close to perfect as you could ask for.
Yeah, I agree, and I guess I can kind of give my list at the end of this, who I think a top team is, but this Boston Celtics team is ridiculous. And honestly, I think Drew Holiday is a better piece than Marcus Smart. Yes, Marcus Smart defensively, I think he might be one, if not the best guard. But Drew Holiday is that X factor when they need somebody. If Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are struggling scoring, Drew Holiday, where Marcus Smart couldn't, Drew Holiday can, and he proved it on the Bucks.
Yeah.
He proved in the playoffs during that title run when they needed somebody, when Middleton got hurt or he was down or Giannis was getting triple teamed. Who was there? Drew Holiday. He was the second guy on that list. So I think he's the biggest piece, and obviously KP. You know, if he's healthy, my God, this is a scary team to try to guard.
No, bro, Drew Holiday helped so much. But that being said, all right, so let's go to team number 2. All right, guys, we had a break, but we're getting back to it now. Team number 2, Milwaukee Bucks. Yeah, the fact that you add Damian Lillard to the Greek Freak, that's insane. They have 2 legit superstars. Greek Freak, you know, obviously, you can say he's the best player. The Joker's the only one who compares to him right now that you can make that argument. But the fact that they have Dame too, who's a top 10 player, one of the best 5 players offensively, absolutely elite, near the rim, shooting the three-pointer. He might be one of the best three-point shooters of all time. And if it wasn't for Steph, we'd be saying he's the best shooter right now. And that all being said, their team is still stacked around them. Like Brook Lopez is a cheat code. Great defender, can shoot threes, and he's 7 foot. Yeah. And then you got Chris Middleton, who like he's a legit offensive weapon in his own right. And I've seen games where like he's kind of carried the team more offensively than the Greek Freak, which is just to say a compliment. Like this team is loaded.
I agree, and honestly, I think you know there's questions of you have a new player, a new superstar. How are they going to gel? I don't think that's going to be an issue. I think within the first few weeks, this team is already going to be a juggernaut. So the Bucks are going to be absolutely scary. And Middleton is the question mark as far as health goes. You know what I'm saying? If he can stay healthy, you got a 3-headed absolute monster that you have to try to go up against.
Okay, so obviously you know who number 1 is. But that being said, we got to give them their flowers.
The Detroit Pistons! No, I'm just kidding.
Yes. But I had to give it to the Nuggets. Like, I kind of wanted to put the Bucks at 1. I even thought about the Celtics, but I had to put the Nuggets. They just won the championship. They're running it back. I mean, like, they lost to one guy. But that being said, I trust them. And there was years where the Nuggets were so good on paper and the Joker was carrying them, but then they just didn't have guys. Like Jamal Murray like literally lost 2 years. And then you didn't even know who you were going to get when he finally came back from injury. But they came into the playoffs, they conquered, And I'm also so happy for Aaron Gordon because he was on the Magic for a while.
He fits that team perfectly.
And he wasn't the second coming of Blake Griffin like people thought he was, but excellent offensive weapon, like around the basket, and he's an elite defender.
Yeah.
And now you pair him up with Nikola Jokic, who proved he's probably the best player in the NBA right now. You can't stop a 7-footer that passes like an all-star point guard, but also shoots like Dirk. Like this dude is the real deal.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Until a team can knock off the Nuggets, they got to be number one, right? Defending champions. I know they lost maybe a shooter or two, but this team is still elite on defense. They still have Jamal Murray. They still have KCP, who's a great 3-and-D player. Aaron Gordon is, that finals, him locking up Jimmy Butler, him locking up other players literally from number 1 to number 5, that is such an asset that Jokic didn't have. He didn't have that. So he just had to do everything himself. To have that where you can sit on the bench and rely on a guy like that can kind of guard the inside. And I know they had another center. They had Bryant. Like they had a good backup. But what I mean is that you got a guy in Aaron Gordon who can guard where they didn't have that flexibility. Yeah, until a team can beat them, they're number one. They have to be. They have to be.
Okay, so this is a summary of the contenders. So this is my top 5. So you're saying probably the only change would be you probably put the Warriors in instead of the Suns.
I would say so. The only reason why is because the Suns still need to prove to us, right? We need to see if that 3-headed monster works because it's all offense from what I can see. Warriors are already established, and they're adding a guy who's already an established player and can fit in literally any system. He's proved it with the Thunder. He's proved it with the Suns. He proved it with he's gonna obviously prove it with the Warriors. So that's the only thing I would change. Well, there's a few others, but maybe I'll wait till. All
right, cool. So we're doing this NBA season preview. This is part 1. This is the power rankings, and then we're about to shoot part 2. Peace.